Saturday morning, let's kick off the Experts program, and Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, is joining us right now. Good morning, Luis.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So let's dive right into the topic today. This is an interesting one with a local angle, and it has to do with a computer hack that was done on some files at the Stevenson School over in Pebble Beach. Tell us what happened.
Stevenson, which is a nonprofit and has a bunch of donors like a lot of other nonprofits, subscribes to a service provided by a company called Blackbaud. And Blackbaud pretty much has like the corner, if you will, on all things with fundraising software for the nonprofit community. They deal with schools and things like arts and cultural organizations, churches, those sorts of things. So they're kind of like, they host a service that lets those organizations manage their donors, which, is a very critical thing for a nonprofit because they depend on those donors to fund a lot of their activities. And it also Blackbaud also gives them the ability to seek out new donors. So anyway, this software used to be hosted on site, right, on a server in everybody's office. But over the last few years, Blackbaud has moved away from those on-premise solutions to hosted solutions, so putting it in the cloud. And so a lot of these organizations, including Stevenson School, have moved their data into the Blackbaud cloud hosted environment. And back in May of this year, Blackbaud was the subject of what's now being called a double ransom attack. We're familiar with ransomware, where somebody gets infected with ransomware and encrypts all the data, and then you have to pay to get the decryption key to unencrypt that data. And more of these attacks have made people get better about backing up their files and having redundancy so that they don't have to pay the ransom. If the files get encrypted, they just restore it from backup. So the cyber criminals, of course, know that, and so they've added a new twist into their ransomware attacks where they infect your environment, and before they encrypt everything, they steal the data. And after you pay the ransomware or not, they then ransom your data. So they double ransom you. They say basically, you got to pay us to decrypt the data. And oh, by the way, if you don't pay us more money, we're going to release all this data publicly. That's what happened to Blackbaud, and they had to pay the ransom to prevent the information, which included a list of donors, included financial information. It didn't include things like credit card or those sorts of things, but it included a lot of really interesting information on the donors that all of these nonprofits had in their environment, including places like Stevenson School.
So is that one of the dangers of hosting information in the cloud? The security for your information, you've now given up control over that, right? Because if you have your own server and you have the information on your premises on a server, if it's my business, I can call the Alvarez Technology Group and have you build a network firewall security for my system. But if I go ahead and I farm out that information to a company like Blackbaud, now I'm kind of like keeping my fingers crossed that, I hope these guys know what they're doing and are keeping my data safe. Isn't that a real danger?
It is. And in fact, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You gain the convenience of not having to have your own data center and not having to really spend the money to protect the data, but you also need to make sure that whoever is hosting your data is taking the proper steps to secure that information. So when we work with customers who are looking at moving to solutions in the cloud, we do our due diligence on their behalf and really interrogate these organizations to understand what kind of things they're doing for cybersecurity and to prevent themselves from becoming a victim and exposing our clients' data to some sort of what happened to the Stevenson School, this hack. And you'd be surprised at how many times when we start really asking questions, deep and important questions, we get kind of crickets because a lot of these third-party hosting companies don't really take cybersecurity as seriously as they should. They're more interested in talking about all the bells and whistles of their software and how easy it is for the end users to use it, and less about what they do to back up that information. How are they implementing cybersecurity protocols? What kind of framework do they use? And sometimes we have to tell our client, hey, I would not recommend you use this organization to host your data because they don't seem to get it. And I'm surprised that somebody like Blackbaud, with the kind of sensitive information that they know they have to store for their customers, was hacked to this degree.
In the instance of the Stevenson School, fortunately, they didn't have social security numbers and credit card numbers and bank numbers and things like that stored online up in the cloud. They still have contact information there and how much money people did donate. So I don't know what kind of liability that poses for someone. Now, obviously, when you're talking about an exclusive school like Stevenson, you could have some parents who are very high-profile people whose personal residences are generally kept secret for security purposes. So now this information that was hacked, kidnappers, real extortionist ransom people could use that information if they were going to do something really, really bad. So I don't know, it would seem that, has Stevenson said if they intend on continuing to use Blackbaud service? Are they going to change service providers or perhaps take this back in-house?
Well, unfortunately, you can't take it back in-house if you're going to continue to use Blackbaud because they don't give you that option anymore. And they are the 800-pound gorilla, or more, the 8,000-pound gorilla of this kind of fundraising platform, because over the years, not only have they been the number one product out there, but they've also either put out of business or acquired all of their competition. So there's not a lot of options if you want to use these kind of services. And so specifically to the Stevenson School, I don't know what their plan is, but I would say if you're a nonprofit and if you have been using Blackbaud to host your data, if they haven't contacted you by now, that you contact them to make sure that your data was not compromised. And if you're still concerned, give us a call. We'll be happy to help. We want to make sure our communities, nonprofits are protected, and we do everything we can to help them out.
Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group. Get in touch with them, alvareztg.com, at alvareztg.com. That's the Twitter handle. And Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-I-Team. That's 866-784-8326.